I'm so excited to be here today with Karen James of Karen James Yoga. And I believe it's karenjamesyoga.co.uk. And then, of course, Karen James Yoga on Instagram. Karen has a passion for making yoga accessible to all. And I can attest that she's a master at doing this. We'll refer to that a little bit later. She's been teaching yoga since 2019 and has experience teaching a variety of online classes, including yin, chair, and yoga nidra. Nothing and so I came to learn about Karen on Instagram. And she's one of the people who shows up the most frequently yoga-wise in my feed, because what you are able to do with a block is, you're just my hero. So welcome to the podcast, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, thank you for that introduction. And I'm normally very short and sweet with my bio. So rather than, go on and on and on, it's just kind of, this is what I do, and here I am, and let's chat. So thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thanks for your sharing on Instagram. I find what you do there in particular so inspiring to my yoga practice. You correct me if I'm wrong, but what I see is that you share chair yoga, and then really creative integration of props, and also almost a reinterpretation of what we often refer to as the asana.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yeah. Try to break that down and reinvent it and the orientation of the body can change. And how does that feel? What does it feel like? What are you trying to achieve? What's your intention? But I like to use the different props. But to be honest, when I first started posting on Instagram, I made the assumption, because when I was practicing my spare room and enjoying all these different variety of postures, I made the assumption that that's actually what people were doing. I mean, yes, you see the narrative of what everybody classes as yoga practice, but it was a shock to me, a genuine shock, when people said, I've never seen that before, or how did you come up with that? Or I just assumed this is what people were doing.
I love that. And so it grew out of your own home yoga practice, out of your own practice. So for you, what's the relationship between home yoga practice and teaching and sharing yoga?
So my home practice was about trying to put myself into a different position, i.e., what if I couldn't move my legs? How could I take that practice, and how could I change it but still not feel left out? What if I could only use my arms or my head or my eyes? So it was that kind of thing, to say, okay, how is that still yoga? And what if I don't want to get out of bed today? How could I, if I want to practice, because I like to practice in my bed. So where I was very pre-pandemic, I was very physical in my yoga practice. I obviously go to a lot of classes, and then I started to think, what would it be like to use props? Because nobody really, it was always, they're there if you need them. And that word need always kind of got to me, because I thought, well, nobody's shown me how to use that. They're just telling me I can if I need it. So that was another thing.
It begs the question, how would I know?
Yes. How would I know to use the block, and what is the block for? And I'm able-bodied, and I wanted to use the block to understand how I can incorporate it into my practice. And I practiced a lot at home in different ways of, you know, turning things on their head. So, for example, balance. People will automatically assume we're going to balance on one foot. Well, no, let's balance the block on our back of our hand. Let's balance the block on our palm. How does that change what you're doing? And then give yourself time to explore how that feels. So it was taking something that people assumed and turning it round and turning it upside down. So that's kind of how I started with using props, the blocks, first of all, in especially in a class, and not feeling so intimidated by other people, because it was still that narrative of, you don't need those though, do you? You don't need to use those. And I kind of went against the grain and thought, I will use them because I enjoy it. I enjoy. And then I got to be the person that, oh, you've always got the blocks. You're always using the blocks. But why? And I said, because I want to. And I want to challenge myself to see what it feels like, and play around with that. And then I think, obviously, with pandemic, being at home and having so many props around, it was just a kind of a natural progression to play and see how I could enjoy it and get lost in movement and get lost in the feeling that it created, rather than what I looked like.
Ah, one of the things that I think is so distinctive about yoga, because at the beginning of my teaching career, I did a lot of thinking because I've always been sort of a gym rat, and I love yoga. My first memories of doing yoga, I was like 3. So it's all been sort of in the mix. And one day I'm in a teacher training 20 odd years ago, and I'm thinking, this is a lunge with my arms up, right? But I feel so different when I do this here. What's the difference, right? And that has evolved over time to this incredible focus on and gift of realizing that it's all about how you feel in the pose.
Mm.
You continually return to, it's about the sensory experience. It's about play and joy, and because I want to.
Yeah. And I think we forget, and I know, especially I say we, but I know that I've forgotten what it was like to be a child and just to accept and try something, and it may work, it may not, and just to be that curious observer and to reconnect to yourself. And probably one of the things with yoga teachers, we may be very good at how we connect, and then we make that assumption that people in front of us will also know that. So I find that you've got to, as we all say, teach who's in front of you. But the main thing is, I'm not trying to teach you a pose. I'm trying to teach you how to reconnect with yourself, and that you feel safe in yourself to do so, to explore that. A lot of time people talk about, oh, I create, I'm here to keep you safe. And I actually disagree with that statement, because that is not my job. I believe my role is to create a safe space where you can explore your own safety. And then maybe I'll just sort of remind you, don't go too far, or what's the sensation, or how are you feeling in that? But your safety is your agency. And inherently, I'm not going to try and get you to stand on your head, or do the splits. So sometimes so I teach one now. I'm down to, because I work full time, so I teach one class a week, and sometimes I joke and say, do you know what, today we're going to balance on one finger, and everybody starts laughing because they've been coming to my classes now for the last couple of years, and then I'll just put my finger on the chair and say, and then move, and I'm like, I am still balancing on one finger, you can't deny that. And it's just the play, and just to get people to not take it so seriously, because this could be the one opportunity that person gets to really feel safe enough within themselves to connect. And it's more about how you feel after that hour together, and how can you incorporate that within your life, that it doesn't have to be a movement practice. It could be something you recognize that you don't want to participate in. So it's always trying to get people to widen their scope of how they feel safe and how they show up in the world long after they've left the class.
I love it. So the element of play is actually a way to invite people into a conversation with themselves.
Yes.
And I love how you highlight that at some point, all of us, I'm in my mid-50s, and so at several points so far, I have lost touch with the little girl who once was, right? And the playing and the crawling on my belly in the grass, looking for bugs and clovers and whatnot, right? And whatever it was, not all kids did that, but whatever our thing was, right? And I think you're absolutely right. That's the magic. And when I lose touch with that magic on the mat, my practice goes flat.
Mm.
I call that when the practice feels like kryptonite.
Yeah.
Right. And then I have some processes for like how to melt the kryptonite. But yours is so elegant in its simplicity. It's play, right? And that really is, that's the essence, I think, of yoga. Isn't the Sanskrit word for play something like lila?
I don't know. I confess, if I won't say yes because I'm not sure.
I and I'm certainly no expert, but it's stuck in the recesses of my brain. And to me, I know that there is a Sanskrit word for play, and it figures very greatly in Tantra and some of the sacred scriptures. And that to me says that it's central, right? It's central to our yoga practice and all of the rules that we learned in teacher training about knees being above ankles and all the rest of it, right? And low backs not curving and all of that. They're on the outer circle of the target, and this sense of play is, if not the target, it's much closer in.
Absolutely. And when I did my teacher training, unfortunately, the person that took the sort of the training side of it was very much about, who are you doing this for? It was more very much drills and you can do this, and if you don't want to do this, who are you letting down? Who did you say you were going to do that pose for? You said you're going to do it for your mum, so why are you not doing it? Why are you letting your mum down? And it was so much that when it came out of that, whereas I think some people will have their yoga teacher training and very much be frightened to take those training wheels off the yoga bicycle training, because they will follow verbatim to how they've been trained. I just thought that was just not going to be, a drill sergeant. And I was lost for a bit, because I just thought, I don't know how I'm going to show up to teach people, but I know what I'm not going to do. I just now need to discover how I would like to, and using props, because that was another thing. You don't need those kind of things. That if you can do that, if you can do this, you don't need require. It was it was unpleasant. So coming out of that, probably I rebelled a bit when I started to use the props to see how it would feel, but equally thinking, well, if I feel marginalized in any way, how could I utilize this? And that's where I started looking at different types of teaching that would be more accessible, and sort of learning about that. And as I say, having this just trial and error and play, about how I wanted to show up in a practice.
Mm. I think it's interesting, and you mentioned that you started training in 2019.
So, oh,
Yeah.
sorry. So the training, it was for it started in beginning of 2018 and
Ah,
then finished in 2019. So it was almost a year and a half, of training, and then coming out, it was, I don't know how to take this now. This 200 hour, I don't know what to do with it. Um, and I was thinking, and I didn't want to teach, but I'd been teaching classes, at work. After work, people would come along, and then after I finished my training in 2019, it was, people at work said, right, come on, we want to start the classes again. And I thought, I don't want to, because I don't know how, unless I'm turning into a drill sergeant, I don't know how I'm going to manifest this for you. So yeah, that's when I started, teaching, because I felt bullied into it with the people. I felt bullied. I was like, I can't escape them. But in terms of the home practice, I would say that really was when we had the pandemic. That's when
mm,
nobody could go anywhere, and then developing the home practice from there, and having the time to explore a little bit more with the chair, the blocks, straps, balls, wall, just finding, um, I think going online a lot, what I tended to do, because you could always turn off your camera, is join a normal class and then challenge myself to do that class seated, and not necessarily keep up with the pace, but
mm.
then have to stop and figure out and say, well, okay, that I couldn't think of that straight away. How can I rework that, but in a gentle way, in a way that if somebody else was doing it that wasn't fully able-bodied, that they wouldn't be left behind, and they wouldn't feel as if, oh, that's not for me, and that they would feel that they could say, I don't want to do that, and I know that I'm under no obligation to do that just because I invited them. So I always say I'm here to facilitate, not dictate to you. And, the agency always remains with you. But try this, or try that, or how do you feel, or go back to something else. So the home practice side of things, definitely through the pandemic and having so much time on my hands to just roll around the floor and find what works for me.
I have this theory that it's not even, it's non-falsifiable and it's non-verifiable. But I have this theory that the way yoga really started, right? However you want to chunk history, 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 4,000, 10,000, whenever, was that there was a certain personality of people who were just interested in figuring out what their bodies could do, right? And using their bodies as their own jungle gym. And they found each other eventually, and they would share sort of what they had figured out over the past cycles of the sun and moon, and then they'd go apart and then they'd play more. And then they'd come back together and then they'd play. And that's really how we got these, what is it in Iyengar's book, Light on Yoga, I think it's 567 or 571 yoga poses. And then of course there's more on top of that, right? And people are making up their own, which is fantastic. But however you number the postures, this practice is really just born of people having an intuition that moving our bodies spontaneously and playfully while crying, while laughing, while bored, while sitting, right in bed, all of these ways is part of the joy of being human. And that experiencing even just this little taste of that joy once a day as you're waking up, as after you make the breakfast or whatever the thing is, or before you go to bed, is one of the ways of just connecting to yourself, right? What it means for you to be alive.
Yeah.
And I love the way you talk about agency and empowerment, because I think one of the things I, like you, hadn't meant to teach yoga. And then the person who led the teacher training asked me to sub for them, and then I got a class, and it just all sort of snowballed until years later, the teaching yoga and what I was doing as a profession were taking up equal time, and I was like, I gotta choose. And I think that what drew me, almost like an osmotic pressure along the path, is that feeling like there's something in the deep roots of yoga, what you're talking about, the agency about what we're doing on the mat, and consent and empower. That is almost the definition of empowerment, when we're experiencing it in a certain way. I guess that's what I appreciate so much about your teaching, that I have experienced on Instagram, is that I think what you share is the essence of empowerment. The last thing, and I think we just have a couple of minutes left in the time that we have allotted for today, but you also share poetry on Instagram, and I enjoy poetry so much. How do poetry and yoga relate to you, if you've thought about that?
I have, because sometimes when I'm at my most peaceful, I always just say there's a voice that whispers, and these words come out. Maybe that I relax, or I see something that's upset me, but I don't know how to put it into words, and then I just find myself relaxing, and then the first two lines will pop in my head, just like that. And then it's that creative side. Then all of a sudden I'll do a few more lines, and sometimes it might take me 30 minutes, sometimes it could take me 10 minutes to write something. And when I post it, I'll get messages to say, you've just written what's in my heart, which will normally set me off crying. But it is that, just, you feel something, you feel it deeply, and you create it. And I've read some of the things back, and I wonder myself now, because I can't put myself in that position at the time when I wrote something. I do think, where did that come from? That's like, oh my goodness, even that, I feel that. And I think that's that association of feeling something but being, rather than demonstrating it through movement, I feel it through the words.
So it's like the yoga of words.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. And I think that I would love to talk to you more and about many other things. And I think that that's the perfect place to leave it tonight. Tonight for you, this afternoon for me. I am touched and tickled and all sorts of good things that we've had this time to talk about, something it seems like we're both very passionate about, and from different sides of the pond, from different life experiences, and I appreciate how you shared your practice so very much. Thank you for talking with us today.
No, it's been my absolute pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you can find Karen at Karen James Yoga on Instagram and karenjamesyoga.co.uk.